Thank you everyone for helping start 501c.cc. This is our first webinar, and I'll be working to build out the community online and possibly in the real world over the next couple months. I'm Lee Feinberg, and today my co-presenter is Donna Stribbe from the Maryland Food Bank. Donna, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, Lee. I'm really excited to see what you do with our visualizations.
Well, we're all going to do it together in real time. So Donna is the Maryland Food Bank's business analyst and project manager. And for 8 years, she's been working on projects and providing analytics for the operations and strategic planning for the organization. And she's recently started using Tableau, which is great. So this is perfect for us to start working with Donna and helping the food bank. And this is really part of my company, Decision Viz. It's our ongoing partnership with Feeding America. And so you should definitely check out the Feeding America website at feedingamerica.org. I'm always really stunned by the statistics about hunger in America. And I think if you spend a few minutes there, you'll feel the same about it. And that's why I'm so passionate about working with them. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself as well. I've been working with Tableau since 2009 and started Decision Viz in 2012. And our approach to analytics is a little different than you might be used to, because our focus is really on helping clients make decisions and take actions. Those are the stars of the stories we build. And we think data has more of a supporting role. So we're really focused on the idea of impact. In fact, we have this idea called design to act, and that's what we're going to work through today with Donna and all of you online. So a few housekeeping items. We're going to keep you on mute until Q&A. So of course, feel free to put questions into chat. You'll also receive a link to the recording of the session, and you can feel free to shoot me questions at any time after we're done. The 501c.cc is the intersection of three things that are personally important to me. One is my work with nonprofits, 2 is my work with the Tableau Foundation, and 3 is having run over 80 Tableau user groups since 2010. So it's bringing these three ideas together. Today, Donna and I are going to spend maybe the first 15 or 20 minutes just having a conversation about some of her work and how that can be shown in Tableau. And then we'll start to figure out how do we take her current work and rework it and reimagine it based on that conversation. Now, Donna has no idea what I'm going to ask her today. We haven't rehearsed this, so it's going to be live with all of us together. Now, before looking at how we might improve her dashboards, what we're going to do is I really need to understand why she even needs them. And that's this core of design to act. So let's get started. So I'm just going to have this view up here just so we have something to look at, but we're not going to focus on it yet. So Donna, just could you give a little background on some of the data that you're using and why you even started to use Tableau?
Well, we've always had a lot of data, but it's been always a bunch of numbers, which people don't tend to pay as much attention to as they should. I have a fairly new senior leadership team at the Maryland Food Bank, and they're very data-driven and they're very visual. So, because of the Tableau relationship with Feeding America, I thought, why not? What better opportunity do I have to try a visualization tool to see if it would make an impact with the organization? And I really feel it has. As you see, I am new, and the visualizations probably reflect that. But basically, the reason I started, we were down in our poundage distribution from last year, And it was kind of putting it into a viz to really show where we were last year versus this year. Why aren't we doing as well? Up in the upper right-hand corner, that's our different product types. So what are we down in? Are we down in donated food? Are we up in purchase as a result of being down in donated? So it's a lot of moving parts. And again, I'm not sure if the visualization is showing my intent, but that's what I wanted to do. The bars for each month was to show where are we this year compared to last year. Some months we were down, some were, heads and shoulders above last year. I wish I knew how to kind of distinguish between the two, where it would show down versus up over last year, but I'm not that good yet. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is it's great to hear that your leadership team, one, is thinking about data and how it can be used, and also that they're visual, so that hopefully they'll be accepting of this approach versus saying, just give me lots of tables of numbers, things like that, which can be frustrating sometimes when you're trying to move into a more visual world. So those are two great starting points, and we can definitely work from there. So have you shared these views yet with your management team?
I have shared them with the executive team. The goal was that they would share them down through their staff, and it hasn't happened as much as I had hoped. Once I, found out I was going to connect with you, I want to wait and see what we come up with, and then I'll start doing some user group meetings in each department to show what they have available to them as far as visualizing the data that we're always talking about.
Interesting. I think that's a great idea, to go kind of around and do some internal marketing. So what do you think is causing them to not share it as much as maybe you thought they would?
Well, it's one of the problems with going top down. Sometimes you should start bottom up, because while you want your executive team to know and understand everything, they aren't the users of the data quite as much. They want to see it, obviously, month end KPIs, but I think this needs to be at the department level, the ones that are trying to get more food out the door, the ones that are being asked, why aren't we getting more food out the door, so that they can kind of see and gauge where they are on a monthly basis, rather than just looking at it, a snapshot, 15 days into the next month. I mean, this is live. They can look at this daily and see where they are. And I think that's what I would like them to be looking at.
But this is something that people would look at every day. Not necessarily this page, but this is if you had this set up the right way, they might use it every day.
Well, that might be a pipe dream on my part, but more frequently than monthly. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Well, I guess I mean not that they would, but that it actually could be useful to use it every day.
I think it could, at least at the minimum, weekly. Daily might even be a stretch, but I think weekly they could look at it. Are we making progress to getting where we want to be this year? And then going forward, we'll continue to use this each year. I'd love to be able to put the budget on here. Where do we want to be budget-wise next year with our poundage, so we could be comparing budget with actual to see if we're trending to where we want to be.
So do you actually have, when you say budget, do you mean like a target for where you should be?
Yes.
Or are you talking about, okay. Yes. And so do you have that now, or are you just using it more as what you had last year as your target?
I was using what we actually distributed last year. I do not have our budgeted number in here. Going forward, once FY19 is finalized, our fiscal year ends on June 30th, so we'll be starting our new fiscal year soon. So once once FY19 starts, which is 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away, I'd like to be able to put the budgeted number in as well. And we budget by month, so I could do it monthly and annual.
Okay. So that would be so you might have your budget. So let's just project forward. Let's say you're in the next fiscal year. You'd be looking at your budget to see how you're doing this year, and then also would you still compare to next year, or that wouldn't matter anymore because all that matters is hitting the budget?
I think I would probably have this fiscal year and as well as a comparison because it helps drive the conversation. What did it take for us to get to? I mean, we're projected to hit around 44 million again this year. So on a monthly basis, what amount of poundage do we have to distribute to get to that number? So I think it helps. I think it's a good gauge to see if you're on target.
Okay.
So
So
maybe as
40,
far as, I'm
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so 44 million is kind of the number you were looking at because that's what you had last year,
Yes.
or almost 45 million. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay, that's cool. So yeah, I think from what I'm hearing, it does make sense that you really have these two audiences. You have the executives, and maybe there's something different for them, which is because they're not going to necessarily be making the kind of weekly decisions or that you need to figure out where we are and what we need to do maybe to if you have a shortfall, what your actions are going to be, whereas maybe they need something at a higher level that not only just summarizes it but maybe tells them a few things that are going on rather than thinking they're going to go in here and really go through this at a detailed level. I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think you hit it exactly.
And that's one of the things that's always a challenge that I find with all the people that I work with is we're kind of the way we've thought about this kind of work in the past is we'll make a series of dashboards, or some people just make one massive dashboard. And they say, okay, everybody, you go and find what you need from this. And you really need to think about it more, like we've said, where you have different audiences, and it might be that you actually need different types of deliverables, different types of dashboards, or actually we call them analytic stories because we want to get away from dashboards and reporting makes people think about data. So we call them these analytic stories. You might need one for management that tells them what's going on and what they need to do, right? What actions they need to take. And then when you start talking about the staff level, people that are on the ground, it might be some different things that they might be taking different actions. And so you want to give them something that's more tuned to how they're thinking and the kinds of things they need to do. So I think today maybe we'll just stick with the idea of the staff level, but maybe we'll just have conversations about the management side of this as well.
That sounds great.
Yeah. So from what you've done so far, just curious, is there anything on here that when you built it so far that you started to use it at least for yourself, you said, boy, I wish I could answer a few other questions that you haven't yet.
I think on this dashboard, it's pretty encompassing as far as what I wanted to see. You know, this is the other part of it. Since I was new to Tableau, I built what I would like to see. So I think as the analytics people in the food bank, we need to reach out and see what do other people need to do their job. Yeah. And I think that's really key. And that's also one of my goals for 19 is to be able to go to each department and shadow them and see what kind of information would help them do their job and make the decisions that strategically move the organization forward.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So what are some of the things? Let's just fast forward and pretend that this is up and running and we have something really great. What are some of the kinds of actions that people would actually be able to take based on how they get the information?
Let's see, some actions they would take to get the information.
Not to get the information, but from the info. So let's say they're looking at this view.
Okay,
and so they say, oh my good, they say, oh no, we're behind. And what would they do? Do they just say we're behind and oh well, or we're behind and here's 3 things that we might be able to do to help figure out, to help fix that?
Well, they have, and they have started doing that this year. When we see a month, there's a few months there that are good examples. We're significantly behind, so they'll come to me and say, "Well, what did we do that last year at this time? Can you run some numbers to see what agencies were up, what agencies were down? Did we lose some of our big partners as we're distributing food?" So they are taking what's basically a chart, but it's kind of forcing them to ask more questions. So how did we do in January? 5.9 million pounds, but we only did 4.4 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's I'm going to use the word forcing, but it's not really quite the correct word. It's making them at least think about, wow, how did we do that last year, but we're not doing it this year? So we did start looking at that, and we did find that some of our large partner agencies really dropped off. And then upon further investigation, it was, oh, well, the leadership changed. There's not the same people there. So then that led to, well, maybe we need to go to the agencies and do some training, or, bring the new leadership in and kind of explain how the whole process works. So it has really helped, in my opinion, exponentially as far as making them think past just a bunch of numbers where we're going, oh, okay, we're down. I guess we need to do something. But they're actually having it like this. And again, it's not the prettiest in the world, but it's slightly effective. It's kind of making them think, how did we get where we are? How are we not getting where we want to be? And then looking deeper into the data to find out.
Okay. So maybe just for other folks that are on the line who might not be familiar with, who should have talked about this in the beginning, maybe just quickly describe what you do. What does the food bank, how does it operate? Because we're talking about partners, talking about agencies.
Right. And we do use those words interchangeably. Just, it's not on purpose to confuse people, but it is confusing. So we are basically a distribution center, but we don't do direct distribution. We don't touch the clients, the people in need directly. We deal with churches, other organizations that actually get the food from our food bank, and they distribute it directly to the people in need in the state of Maryland. So though the groups, the churches, the organizations, those are called agencies or partner agencies, of what the terminology that we use to refer to them. So when I say a partner agency may have fallen off, that's the Boys and Girls Club or Salvation Army. Maybe they had a change in leadership and nobody communicated that with us, and that's why their poundage was down. So that's basically how we distribute the product in the state.
And so when you say poundage is down, that means they're not taking as much food from you.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So not to get too bogged down in the numbers yet, but on this particular view that we have off the distribution dashboard, when you say you have a shortfall, does that mean you have, say, product, you have food available, but people are not coming to get it?
That's correct. We do have product available, and they just aren't moving it at the pace that we anticipated they would. And that's another thing that this shows is we're down in donated food. That's dropped off a lot in the last few years. Really, since the recession, the donated food has dropped off because people have realized we get a lot of food from grocery stores and stuff. They had to learn how to order better and not order so heavy when the recession hit. So there isn't as much donated food out there. So the other thing this is showing is if we're down and donated, do we have to make it up by purchasing more product in order to have the food available for our partner agencies?
So where does that money come from?
Fundraising, grants. We have some awesome funders in the state of Maryland that help us with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really both sides. So you'd want to monitor both, right? Because you might find that you can pick up the distribution side and then maybe you don't have the supply to meet the demand. Although
that's very true as well, yes.
Doesn't sound like you're in that situation right now, but I guess you could be.
Well, yeah, from the donated side we are. Again, we have to supplement that with purchase, but as you just said, purchase comes at a cost. So it's a lot of moving parts to manage.
Yeah, and it's kind of the reverse of how most people might have been thinking about a shortfall, right? Because shortfall is like we don't have enough money to do what we need, and yours is more short. Your term of shortfall is a lot of it is we don't have enough people trying to take our product from us,
Right.
right? Which is be a great thing, right? You want people to do that, so you
Yes.
wanna have that food moving. Great. So what do you think would be the biggest barrier for getting, not aside from leadership, from your kind of peers, the staff? What would hold them back, you think, from using something like this?
I don't know that there would be. I mean, I think one of the issues is having enough of license for them to view.
Okay.
We do get some through Feeding America. We have a pretty large organization. We have over 100 employees. Now, obviously, they don't all need access or want access to Tableau. But it's just about finding how many licenses do we need, and would it be advantageous for us to get more? Are people
Sure.
going to use it? Yes, it would be great if they're going to use the tool.
That makes sense. So aside from just not having access, you think people would be ready to go?
I
They
think
had
they
the,
would. I
yeah.
think they would, just because of the turn that the organization is taking toward being a very data driven organization. I think they would definitely embrace something like this.
Okay. That's good, because sometimes I hear that, yeah, we could do this, and then we're going to have a lot of problems getting people ready to go, and how to fight that part of the challenge, right? Because
Hmm.
you can make something, but it's not always like the field of dreams, right? It's not
Right,
always people who
right.
come and use it.
Build it and they will come, yes.
Yeah, and sometimes it is, and it sounds like, fortunately, that you might be in that situation, and also I guess maybe even though you have 100 employees, your audience is smaller than that, so you can.
Yes.
Sounds like you can literally walk around to them, or I guess some of them might not. Maybe some people are remote, but you could sit down next to them, and it's not a massive global corporation where you can't sit right down next to someone and work on it with them, and walk them through using something like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so let's jump in. We might come back and forth and maybe do some more questions, but I think this is a good start in trying to focus on, really, I guess there's two sides here, is to know kind of the in and the out, right? Are we meeting our goals of what we're distributing out, and where do we also sit with product coming in, right? Because we kind of want to look at both of those. And I'm not sure if your work that you've already given us here has both sides of that or not, but we can go in and take a look.
Okay. No, it does not. There's a whole nother report group for the receipt side, so there's
Okay,
not any inbound
so
on
this
this.
great. Okay, so then we can just focus on. So this is really just where is product going?
Correct.
Okay, great. So let's jump in here and just kind of get a lay of the land. So just for folks on the phone, one thing I like to do when we start working on anything is just to make a quick copy of everything so that we don't disturb what work is already there. And there's a nice little trick here. One thing that you can do is you can duplicate a dashboard in this case, but that only makes a copy just of the dashboard. But what we want is all of the worksheets under it. So if we copy the dashboard and then we paste it, we'll actually get copies of the dashboard and all the worksheets. We'll just wait for that to pop up. Great. So now you can see we have all these version 2s. So now we can go in and do whatever we need to do to start with this. So one thing that hits me is just maybe I'm sure you all know internally what it means, but just for our work here, what's the difference between fiscal year 2017 and then these two fiscal year to date values?
Okay, fiscal 2017 is the full year, July 1, 16 through June 30th, 17. And then the fiscal year to date is 17 is July 1st to whatever day you received this report. So to
Okay,
date,
got it.
basically.
Okay. So this is, so we know at some point when we get to June 30th, these two numbers will match.
We hope.
Well,
Oh yeah,
in theory they should,
the
because
17. I'm sorry, the 17
yeah,
one will match. Yes, it's
yeah,
the 18. We're hoping the 18 is up there in that range. Yes.
yeah. I figured that they should be the same number at some point. Okay. And then here, this is just really a monthly breakdown of what's happening in the year itself.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Perfect. Okay. I'm just taking a quick look here to see some of the things that we'd want to focus on.
Well, I'm going to just make a quick comment under the item type. Those D-dash numbers should all be under donated. They shouldn't be sitting there by themselves. I have since fixed that.
Oh, you mean this drop down or these?
Those, all of that. The only thing that should be showing there is donated, facilitated, purchased, and USDA. I had done
Oh, some things here. Gotcha.
yeah, all of those D dash should be located under donated. Just in case you're going to do anything with that, I just wanted to explain
Oh,
why they're kind of sitting there all by their little selves.
gotcha. Okay. Maybe we can go in and talk about that. So actually, why don't we just do that as a starting point, just because maybe there's a few little maintenance things to do. So how did you actually go about putting all of these under donated?
I created groups. I think it was a group.
Perfect.
And then
Yeah.
I slid them up, but every single day in the food bank, we're creating new items. So the new ones weren't just magically populating into the correct item category code.
Mm,
But thanks to Stephanie at Feeding America, she showed me how to do that with a calculated field. So now they are working. So now basically the calculation said if it's D dash, put it under donated. If it's U or UB, slide it under USDA. So it is working now.
perfect.
But again, when you and I first spoke, I didn't have that fix in here. So
Okay.
just
So
wanted
I
to
see you
explain.
already have some kind of group here. So let's go in and
Correct.
edit that.
Yeah.
So for the time being, let's just go in and take all those and put them under donated.
Yes.
Okay. I see. There's already a lot in there, and those are just new ones that were coming in.
Correct. Yeah,
Gotcha.
those are new items that have been created. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that's great.
Okay. That looks so much better. Thank you.
Yeah, and also that cleans it up a lot too, to not have all those smaller items.
Hmm.
So while we're here, so this is just step me through. This is showing us what does item type actually mean?
Okay, so donated product is product that is donated to us at no fee. Just out of the generosity of their heart, they give us product. Facilitated is donated product, but that is product mainly from grocery stores that we facilitate a relationship with our partner agencies where they go directly to the grocery store and take the product back to their facility. So essentially, it doesn't have to hit our doors.
Okay.
The agencies get it, they can distribute it that day. It's much quicker. The end users get much fresher product than if we're picking it up, bringing it back, and then redistributing. So that's facilitated. Purchased is the food that we are going out and purchasing with money. And then the USDA is USDA commodities, the TFAP, and the CSFP product, which is product that is kitted for senior citizens.
Got it. All right. So one thing that strikes me, if I just go back here, is you made the comment before that you didn't have any of think on the incoming side, but I guess this is one piece that you do.
Well, this is still all distribution. This isn't the
Okay.
incoming. So we
Oh,
still
so this is distribution. This is just showing you what's distributed by how it came in.
correct. Yes.
Ah, okay. And
Yes.
I'm seeing that this,
Sorry.
yeah, no problem, that this number matches this number as well, which I guess makes sense, right?
Yes.
That's a good thing. Okay. So let's see what we can start doing here. So let's take a look. And so now the thing is, though, right, as you're going through this, when you want to be able to react sooner, right? So what happened way back doesn't necessarily matter unless retrospectively you're trying to figure out what you would have done back at that, back in December. If it's May, it's kind of too late to fix that, possibly.
Right. No, that made sense. I just paused because that
Yeah.
made sense.
Yeah. And just so I can understand some of the other things you were thinking about doing here before we start playing around with it, what were you doing with item types? So I see you have it set up where you could do some kind of filter.
Yeah, I'm assuming if you click the drop down and change it to just donated, that it would on the bars it would just show you donated, how much donated food went out the door. Just to maybe see where were we down. But then again, we're already seeing that in the two stacked graphs above there, so it's kind of redundant.
Yeah, you just don't see it at the detail level here, right?
Right.
By month, right? So all that's doing is showing you that the difference. You'd be able to see if we clicked on donated like we did. That what's the difference here of the 1,000,005 ish
Right.
of where that's coming from on a monthly basis. Okay, but I can see where that might be. Where you might want to at least understand that. So let's think about this from the perspective of those staff folks that we mentioned, right? So they're going to come in here, and what are the different roles that they would play? Do they maintain different relationships with partners and agencies, or are they some people? What's on their mind here?
Yeah, I mean, this would just be for anybody in the organization to kind of look at in totality. But we do have different groups, programmatic groups. We have a group that just works with schools. We have groups that just work with the hot meal programs, just with the network agencies, TFAP, CSFP. They're not quite this doesn't break down to that level.
Mhm.
I'm hoping another one of these actually does at some point. I'm pretty sure I did that somewhere.
Okay.
But this is just kind of an overview of the whole organization to see where we are. I don't know that they would use it a whole lot again, other than say, oh, wow, look what we did last year. Let's maybe look and see what did we do last year to do that much poundage.
Okay.
Just something like that.
All right. Okay. So let's look at this other one here just quickly because distribution dashboard. Oh, that's the same one. Sorry. So distribution by agency.
Yes. Now this one is broken down by location code, which was helped because we actually we have 3 facilities. One is just a cross dock, but we do have 2 full service branches. So if the Eastern location wanted to see how their agencies were doing, they could change the location code to Eastern and then kind of get an idea of what agencies are doing really well. Our top agency, although they're heads and shoulders above all the rest, they're still down from last year. So why are they down? Again,
Okay.
did we not have the type of product they want? Are they not serving as many people? Those are the kind of questions I want people to start asking.
So this might be a little bit more actionable to know where
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
All right. So maybe we can start working with this one a little bit. Let's just play around with it. So I want to look at how you're interacting with it, and then also talk about some of the things that we could do again to make it easier to work with. Maybe we can remove the need for this drop down. Let's see what happens. So one thing I want to talk about, in fact, let's go right into the worksheet while we're doing this. The one thing I want to raise that's pretty common that I see across the board with almost everybody I work with is the way that you've used the red and green here. And which is fine. I mean, what I want to comment on is that there's just an issue in terms of how people might see it literally. So red and green, people may be familiar with this. Red and green for folks that are what you might call colorblind or have color vision deficiency is another term. They can't distinguish between reds and greens, and it's about 7% of the male population, about 1% of the female. So it's pretty much out there, and it could be a big issue for folks. So one thing to do is just always get rid of red and green and go to something else. And I know in certain
Okay.
organizations it's pretty ingrained. It's like, oh, we use red and green, and there's definitely some things you have to work on if people resist that. But for the purposes of this conversation, I know that we can just go in and make the change. All right. So one thing I see here. So I see you chose to go 10 steps of the color here. Is there any particular reason you chose 10? Is that meaningful
Um,
for the organization?
no, again, if I chose it, it's because it looked kind of good. Again, I'm new, so forgive me. There's probably a lot more color than I should have. No, it was more varying degrees of, how far down is that top agency versus the third one down. I think the third one that's really red is about, last time I looked, they were, I don't know, about 40% down over last year. So they're
Mm-hmm.
significantly down. So that's why they're redder than the first one.
Mm-hmm. Got
And
it.
that's really, it doesn't have to be that many degrees. Again, I was just trying to show some significance between slightly down versus dramatically down. And
Yeah.
that would have to be feedback from the programs team. Does that make sense? Does it
Yeah.
matter?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is just,
Which
it's down, down, basically?
that could be helpful to understand the degree. One thing I like to, so let's just first let's see if we can get rid of these. Just let's get rid of the ranges and stuff here. Let Tableau do its thing for the moment. So here, wow, there's some big changes. That's interesting. So you can see that change of 11,000%, whenever that happened, maybe we want to do something like make it, say, just negative 0.25 and then 0.25 or 0.25, so that anything above 25% is just going to be a dark green, and anything below negative 25% will be a dark red. Well, we're going to change the colors, but we can just put a limit on each end. Maybe that would be helpful for now. That way we don't get hit with such dramatic change there. So let's just use red and blue. So we can keep the red. Let's see what that starts to look like.
Okay.
And then I'm going to make a suggestion here. And again, you'll eventually figure out if you like these ideas or not. So one thing that I think, depending on who the audience is, you have to be careful in terms of what their kind of analytic kind of mindset is. And I don't know the folks that you work with. So for example, it could be confusing for them to see a big bar with light red and a smaller bar with dark red and not really know exactly what that means
Mm-hmm.
and how to play with that. So in this case, oh, I forgot my little golden rule here actually. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. Should have done that before. Got so into the conversation. So you'll never go back and change that red and green anyway, so it doesn't matter. So here's one idea. So you've got the percent, these are the same, percent change, right? Yeah, so one thing we could do is we could do something like this and put both values out here. And now I'm guessing this, so you see how small these bars are? That's again because you're going to have somewhere there's going to be that monster 11,000%, right? So we could do the same thing here where, let's see how one might go. So percent change, all right, 0. I'm going to think about that one for a second, but I'll tell you about the idea of what I'm shooting for is to separate the two. So maybe you can see where not have them combined, and it might make more sense to somebody that
Okay.
way, where so they're not trying to mentally put the two together and try to figure out what they mean.
Right.
In fact, the question is, what does it mean, right? It just means that this is where we are today, and we're down from the previous year by a certain amount. What we don't know is where we think we should. Well, we're using this as the bar, right, for where it should be.
Correct.
Now, is the percentage really matter, the percentage change, or just the fact that you're down from where you are? So let's just say you're 100% down on this one and 100% down on this one. Is it just matter that you're below by the amount, or is it the percentage that's more important?
The percentage isn't that important. It was just, again, that was my first inclination to go to it. I'm not tied to it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So think about it this way. What would someone react to more? Would they react to saying we're down by 100% or we're down by 1,000 pounds versus 500 pounds? That could both be 100% change. Okay, so the percentage could be equal, but the actual could be greatly different.
Yeah, I'm going to say, unfortunately, I think they would react to the percentage more, but the poundage is actually the more important number. And I know that's not helping
Interesting.
with designing a graph, but yeah, I mean, because as you just said, if it's 100,000 pounds down versus 100, that's a big deal. But they could both be 100%. So
Yeah.
the 100% kind of loses its importance when you look at it that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, but see, it's important, and I'm glad you said it that way, because you have to understand what their behavior will be, right? So even though you said, yeah, the poundage is more important, but they'll react to the percentage, you have to use that to your advantage. And what I mean is, by knowing that, you can figure out the best way to show the information to get their attention. That's
Right.
really what I'm thinking about here.
No, I agree.
So let's look at, so you have this percent change. Let's go see what that equation is. I think I probably have an idea of what the calculation is. So you're just looking at creating a percent difference. So we could use that to create a actual difference as well. So okay, what we can do, so we actually already have that copy. So let's go back in here. So let's call it change, not percent change or absolute change. If I could spell that. Absolute. And then here, just keep that, then 0 else. Just modify your formula slightly. That should do it. And then absolute change. Let's put that up there too and see what we're looking at. So here, right, you can see how much bigger the difference is, right? Mm-hmm. So one thing we could do if we wanted to play around with it, because this percent change is kind of interesting, we could do a couple things. We could put that back on one of these, and so let's just say we take that one and we put the percentage change. Let's put that back on the color. So now we can see it's a big percentage and it's a big amount. And maybe you could see, maybe you'd find here, it's like, wait, it's a pretty small amount and the percentage is not that big either. So you might be able to find differences here in that way. And then we could just get rid of this one. And we can keep that one kind of that gray, which is good anyway. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
Now this, got to fix this axis because it's not percentage anymore. Format. And number. Perfect. Access. Okay. Oh, sorry. Here we go. There we go. That's what we wanted. We didn't want to see it as percentages. We wanted to see the actual numbers. Now, one thing I also like to do is to just put the actual values on to the ends of the bars,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can fix those numbers up a little bit too. So, for example, here, is it important that this is 2,863,000, or could you maybe say 2.8 million? Or,
Yeah, I think we could do 2.8. It looks a little too busy with all of those numbers in there.
yeah. So actually, what I'm thinking is we'll make it. Let's make it hundreds of thousands, because maybe at some point some of these numbers might get a little too small as we get down there. Maybe we don't even need the point. Maybe we just do that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, there you go.
And
Yeah, I
then
think that looks fine.
let's go over here and let's do the same kind of thing. Let's make it, let's see what we get here. Just make that thousands. Something like that.
Mm-hmm. That looks good. Yeah, I like that.
So then we'll do some other little things here. Well, that I like to do. One is, I think, get rid of all these extra grid lines, these lines going up and down. Because we don't really need that as a reference point, because we're not really looking at the axis, because we have the values. And then
Right.
what we can do is we can just hide all that too. Now we don't even need that. Just to make some space.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'm pretty stingy with the real estate. Although one thing, let me go back. Actually, one thing we'll need to do is we do want to label these. So what I would do instead is go in and edit the axis. And we need a title here, actually. So this is fiscal year date 2018, right?
Yes.
And then what I'm going to do is just get rid of the tick mark, get rid of these labels. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. We can just go back and see what that starts to look like. Great. We can play around with a few little things here. But I think that's a little bit better, a little bit more interesting. Now, let's take a look at one other thing here about, you talked about the regions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you might say, all right, if I select none and then I click Baltimore, then that's just going to show me the totals for Baltimore, right?
Correct.
So let's do this instead. Here's an let's play with this as an idea. Let's make a copy of this one. Duplicate that one actually. And now let's just do a summary of all of this by, it's called what?
Location.
Location, those are the 4 locations. Location code, okay. So I'm going to do, instead of agency code, I'm just going to put that in. And we actually don't need all those. So now what we'll do is we'll get a summary, okay, of these. And then what I'll do, so that's called number 3. So let's do this. So I'm going to put that one up here. We'll get rid of, let's get rid of that title. Let's make sure this gets all the space. And now what we'll do instead is we're going to make this what they call an action filter. Okay, and then and I'll explain what that means. So what we want to do is, instead of having to go through and click this one for each time, we'll just be able to click on Baltimore, and then this will change.
Oh,
Click on
awesome.
Eastern, this will change. So it's a little bit easier from a user's perspective. And also, if you had a lot of data, Tableau might not respond as quickly when you use this kind of filter, which is called a quick filter. It's just understanding how the inner workings of Tableau go.
Okay.
So and it's really simple. When you only have two views like this on a dashboard, Tableau makes it super easy. All you have to do is go over here, and you see this little thing that looks like a funnel. They call it a filter. If you click this, say use as filter, Tableau automatically sets up exactly what we talked about, but I'll show you in a second how it's working under the hood. So now if I go to Baltimore, it just changed for Baltimore. I go to
Oh, wow.
Eastern, and we're gonna make this a little bit easier to know that too. So just to show you what's happening under the hood, here's where actions are in Tableau, and it actually created this filter when we click that little image. We can go in and edit it, and we could give it a new name, click a location. And you see here it says, when I click that, I want you to apply that information to both of these, but it doesn't really matter that it's applying it to number 2 because that's actually the one we're clicking.
That is not showing on the screen, Lee, in case you wanted to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe these different layers are not coming up for some
Okay,
reason.
that's fine. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to look into that. So now one thing that we want to do is, because I might forget what I clicked, even though I could see it here, it's nice just to add one little thing. So we're going to go and say show title. And instead of saying distribution by agency, let's go in here and edit the title. I'll just double click it. I'll say we could say that field is called location. So if I hit apply, oops, maybe it's let's see, might be, we have a couple locations going on, so I'm not sure we got to pick the right one. That's because it's also looking at the filter.
Oh, okay.
Oops, let's see why that didn't work. In fact, let's do this. Let's go into this worksheet, and let's just get rid of this location code filter. Let's remove it. Okay, and then we'll go to this one, and we're going to remove it. We can remove it this way too. We can just drag it off.
Okay.
Those always. So now let's go in here and try that again. Location code. Oh, wrong one, sorry. It's this one we want. Eastern, great. So now it'll just give us the name. So we click through.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then if we unclick it, it'll just say all.
Great.
And we don't need it to say, look, I don't think we need it to say location code there, so we can hide that. And one thing I like to add, well, let's get rid of these things that are hanging out. They're left over. We don't need them anymore. We don't need this one either, right?
Right.
So let's get rid of that. Then we could talk about these in a second, but we're getting close to our hour, so I'm going to finish up in a second here. One thing that you could add, if we go into this title, is we could go to a new line and say, click a location, new filter, the agency view, agency list. And we don't need it to be that big. Maybe we make it 12, and I like to do little things like this just to play around with it, see what that looks like.
Oh, nice.
That way we tell people what to do, because a lot of people don't know.
Right.
So
No,
we don't
that's
want them to
awesome.
have to guess at these kinds of things, right?
Wow. That looks so much better.
And hopefully this is starting to maybe be something that's a little bit more.
In my opinion.
I would move this down here just to get this a little closer. I like that you already had that as a floating element. One thing we could probably do, maybe we don't need the percentage change on this one because it's rolled up, right? We just know that it's a big number. So I might thinking about going back in here and just taking the color off of that one. Might not be as important as just seeing a massive volume change. And then we probably wouldn't want these to be blue because people will think that that's blue also. So let's go back in and let's just change the color back to something like this light gray. One more. We can play with that a little bit, but something like that. And then we probably want to change this gray around. But this is just a starting point of moving towards getting inside their head, understanding, right? Now we're giving them both sides of this, where they can start to understand at a very high level regionally, which we didn't even have on the last one, right? We didn't even have that total view. So now they can come in and look at this. And we could start doing other things, right? We could start letting them look at it over time. Maybe we could give them a time way to filter it by month, let them do that. There's a lot of different things I think we could do here. And then you've obviously got these other filters that we would want to figure out maybe a good way to use that, but I can see that there's some options here as well.
Right.
So let me see if you have, what questions or thoughts do you have so we can close out and maybe get to a little bit of Q&A.
Well, I probably have a million questions, so we won't go into those right now. But as far as my opinion, this looks great. I just feel it's so much more telling than the original form. I love it.
Great. So I'm glad to hear that. And that's where we want to get to. And I know there's always so much more you can do, and we're just kind of tapping the surface of this. So here's an idea that I always like to promote. When you're out talking to somebody about this, is to just step them through it as you think they should use it and not necessarily talk about the charts or anything like that, for example, right? So if I were sitting down, I might come into the conversation and say, hey, let's take a look at this because I see some really interesting things going on in agency 7060. We can see that they're the third highest in terms of what the distribution is, but they've had a major shift since last year, one of the biggest shifts. We really need to take a look at that quickly. That might be the first thing you want to hit on with them, right?
Absolutely.
And then right, because you could scroll up and down here, and maybe you should. And other things we can do is you can sort by these different things, right? Because maybe one of the higher ones is down here, right? We know there was one change that was high in percentage, but it might have been smaller in volume, right? And what you don't want to have to do is scroll. Now, obviously, once you're down to these smaller numbers, they're not that significant in terms of something that's actionable, unless you find out that you clicked on Eastern and maybe something pops up, right? So here, wherever agents 7060 obviously was not there. Maybe it's in Baltimore. Yeah, so there it is. That's a Baltimore one.
Right.
So there's other things you can do too. We could actually make this filter up here, and then we could see which one 7060 belong to. Although I imagine is there a one-to-one between the agencies and the regions, or do
Yes.
some span? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So if we did that, just to show quickly, when we reverse it now, if I click 7060. Filters to Baltimore.
Okay,
Must think there's something in kitchen in your data. So all I did again is I just clicked that filter, and Tableau automatically said, oh, I'm going to use this one to filter the other view. So that's a quick way to know, like if you haven't memorized every agency and where they belong, this is a quick way. And one other thing I'd like to do here, you see how it was making that a big fat bar? I don't like the way that looks. So instead of saying, oh, actually, go back. What I do, I'm going to click on this one, and I'm going to say fit width instead of fit the view. That way, when I click this, it looks nicer.
Okay, yes, it certainly does.
So let's save this because we don't want to forget that. So thanks. First of all, I really want to thank you for going through the conversation, because I think we really unearthed some different viewpoints about how you could use this internally and start targeting the right audience, getting down to that staff level, and this could be a good starting point because this will give you a way to manipulate not only at the regional level and to start to tell that story, but then start to drill down more at some of the agencies and understand specifically where some of them might be having those bigger gaps that you're looking at. So hopefully this is going to help you get started along that
Absolutely.
path. Great. So let's just pause here and we'll take a few Q&A.
Great.
Is there a publicly accessible GIS data set that has USPS zip codes? My guess is yes. Where that is, I don't know. It could be on the Census Bureau site, potentially. They do have a lot of open data there. So that would be the first place I would check. Here's another question from Stephanie Dorfman. You mentioned you accept submissions every month. Can you please share more about what that means? Do you take submissions for Tableau projects? Yeah, so this is how the program works. So if you go to the 501c.cc homepage, you'll see that there's a link to click to email a submission. And it would be something similar to what Donna proposed here. It's got to be an existing project. It's not a project that we're going to create. And the idea is that when we get all of the technical difficulties out of the way, it'll be more of a conversation so that we're going to really be hearing from you about what it is you were trying to accomplish, and then we'll go through and start making some of the changes. Got a question here from Abel Murillo. What advice can you give to those of us implementing Tableau for the first time? What should we do, not do? Wow, great question. Well, I assume you say implementing Tableau, that you're talking about Tableau desktop and not necessarily Tableau server, because there's really, I would say, very different ways to answer that question. I would say in Tableau desktop, I would start small. Don't try to tackle too much, because what happens is you can get really tied up in the data and not focus on making, moving forward, trying to get some initial insights. So I would say start with a data set where you don't going to have to go in and start doing joins or other kinds of things like someone was just asking about here. If it's an Excel file, use that. I say start simple. And that's the best way, I think, to learn Tableau, is to start using it. You can go and watch some videos on their website. They have kind of a starter guide where you can go in and follow a bit of a curriculum. But of course, you're going to be going through what their data set is. And one of the things that I hear a lot, especially from the nonprofit world, is their data sets are typically things about things like profits and sales and selling widgets and things like that. So I find that just getting in and using your own data, trying to do something with it, and then maybe going in and seeing some more specific details about how to use the software is a good starting point. Another question from Zach. Seems like this is targeted for Donna. Besides pounds, what measures do you use? I have a hard time reading what is currently listed on the screen. I can speak from a little bit of experience, having worked with some of the Feeding America groups. So clearly the distribution, is one of the key things, and it depends, again, what you're looking at. You can be looking at what's coming in, who's donating, what kinds of products they're donating, how often. And then on the outbound side, right, of course, you might want to look at the breakdown of what certain areas, what they're getting, where they might have more food insecurity over time. So I think pounds is good because it's a general measure, but I think you have to really start also, in the long run, getting down and starting to look at the specifics, because different geographies, even though it's a smaller zone, what you're seeing here, they could end up having quite different needs. That was one more question from Zach, but all those things are dimensions, right? Not measures. Uh, well, no, not necessarily, because if you think about things like quantity that could be different from pounds, you could have counts of items, is a possibility. I think it depends on how you're operating, but I do see pounds as being one of the main things there.
So everyone, thanks so much for the great questions. It was you're definitely digging in and asking some great things here. And just to close out, really appreciate your joining us for the first uh, installment of 501c.cc. And I want to stress this is our community. This is something for us to build on and really begin to use it as a platform for making an impact in the nonprofit world. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. And we'll let you know when the next session is scheduled for July.